The veil of night was retreating, and the city was slowly immersed in the rays of a new day. People were lazily crawling out to meet the new day, and cars began to fill the streets with their familiar noise and bustle. In one of the apartments, there had been a commotion for the past 3 hours, no less than on the streets. A young, slender girl was darting around the room. Veronica, young and energetic, ready for the adventures of the new day. Her apartment was marked by minimalism, white furniture, glossy surfaces, not a single trinket. This could be said if one didn't look into her closet. Sets of outfits that anyone could envy. She was a designer and appreciated stylish things, even if she never wore them. But this morning was special for her. For the past few years she had been tirelessly working, and now she was flying to Paris at the invitation of a fashion house she had been collaborating with. They wanted to sign a new contract with her. She was to lead an entire direction in a new clothing line. She had never dreamed of this before, so her mind was swirling with numerous images of how she could present herself at this meeting. The flight passed quickly, and Veronica headed to her hotel. The next morning she went to the meeting. To her surprise, the negotiations went quickly and very successfully, leaving her with a few free days to explore the city. This was a good opportunity to take a break before her new position, she thought. Veronica wandered through the streets, enjoying the architecture. She wasn't interested in tourist routes, preferring to get lost in the labyrinths of narrow streets and courtyards. One day, she accidentally stumbled upon an antique shop. Its display window, adorned with antique clocks, porcelain figurines, and time-darkened paintings, was alluring and mesmerizing. Veronica couldn't resist and went inside. The shop was filled with the smell of dust and antiquity. Behind the counter, an old man was dozing, but he immediately perked up when he saw Veronica. Finding nothing of interest, Veronica was about to leave when the old man called out to her. He pulled out an antique pocket mirror from under the counter, encased in an elegant dark wooden frame. Veronica wasn't interested in antique items, but something about this mirror caught her eye. She haggled with the old man and bought the mirror. Leaving the shop, she curiously examined her purchase. The mirror was uneven, covered in a web of fine cracks, as if bearing the imprints of the years it had witnessed. Veronica couldn't explain why she bought this strange item. She didn't believe in mysticism or omens, but something about the mirror fascinated her. Veronica eagerly awaited her return home. She had already packed her things and just needed to call a taxi and head to the airport. Taking her purse, she happily pulled out the recently purchased pocket mirror. While waiting for the taxi, Veronica examined it with interest. An antique item, she thought. The metal frame with wooden inlays was covered in scratches, each bearing the secrets of history. On the outside, a figure of a girl lifting the edge of her dress was engraved. Inside, when the mirror opened, there was another, newer one, framed with a pattern of roses. Veronica looked into the mirror. Reflected was a girl with beautiful black hair and flawless skin, without a single wrinkle. Her gray eyes stood out against her pale face. Suddenly, Veronica was overcome by a wave of heat. She saw something in the mirror that she couldn't explain. 2 cars colliding, enveloped in smoke. Stunned, she couldn't look away. Seeing her reflection again, Veronica froze, unable to move. The ringing of her phone snapped her out of her stupor. The taxi had arrived. Gathering herself, she stepped outside. Seeing the car, Veronica felt a chill. It was the same car she had just seen in the mirror. Her legs turned to jelly, and her breathing became heavy. Approaching the taxi and opening the door, she met the gaze of the driver, a middle-aged man. He clearly noticed something was wrong with Veronica. "Are you okay?" he asked politely. I don't know," Veronica muttered. Hesitating, she apologized, said she urgently needed to cancel the ride, and, paying for the taxi, returned to the hotel lobby. Her head was ringing, and her heart was pounding wildly. Veronica sat on the couch, trying to calm herself. After 5 minutes, she went outside to get some fresh air. Her eyes immediately fell on the intersection where the collision had occurred. The taxi and a truck had crashed. Veronica, panicked, ran to the scene of the accident. The place was already crowded with people. In the throng of onlookers, someone remarked, "It's a good thing no one was behind them. The back of the car is completely gone." Overwhelmed with horror, Veronica ran to another taxi, engulfed in a whirlpool of fear and conflicting emotions. The words, "It's a good thing no one was behind them," kept echoing in her head. Returning home, Veronica was no longer the same. The image of the horrific accident wouldn't leave her mind. She became obsessed with the mirror, spending hours sitting in front of it, staring into its dark depths. This took a toll on her health and behavior. Veronica became distracted, withdrawn, and her productivity plummeted. Her colleagues attributed it to fatigue, as she had always worked with full dedication. But this time it was different. Since that day, the mirror hadn't shown her anything new, but Veronica couldn't shake the compulsive urge to look into it. She began to doubt herself, her sanity. Maybe it had all been just a dream. One day, sitting on the terrace of a summer cafe, Veronica, feeling slightly better, drank coffee and enjoyed the warmth of the summer day. The mirror was in her purse, and she no longer thought about it for hours, but the incident in Paris still haunted her. Suddenly, she pulled out the mirror and absent-mindedly glanced into it. In the reflection, she saw a cat walking on the sidewalk, and next to it, a woman lying on the ground. Veronica broke into a sweat. "What cat? I don't have a cat," she muttered, trying to push away the intrusive thoughts. Taking a few sips of coffee, she continued walking through the park toward her home, but as she approached the next street, she saw an ambulance and a crowd of people. Veronica's heart began to beat faster. On the ground lay a woman, and next to her walked a cat. Soon she learned that the cat had climbed onto a building's parapet, and the woman, trying to rescue it, had fallen. At that moment, Veronica realized two things. The mirror wasn't showing her own death, but a death that could happen. She wasn't losing her mind. On Monday, returning to work, Veronica was greeted by her assistant, Lisa. In an anxious voice, Lisa informed her that a tragedy had occurred over the weekend. "Do you remember, you were supposed to take on a new intern?" Lisa asked. "Well, she died." Veronica felt a chill run through her. "How?" she whispered faintly. "They say she fell out of a window trying to reach her cat," Lisa replied sympathetically. This news hit Veronica like a bolt of lightning. She recalled the vision in the mirror, the ginger cat, the woman lying on the ground. This can't be a coincidence, she thought. Veronica realized that the deaths she saw in the mirror were not random. She had seen this girl, even met her. This meant the mirror showed her events related to people she knew. It was a new, horrifying revelation. Veronica couldn't suppress a shiver. She understood that now she had to live with this terrible secret, with the burden of knowing about impending deaths. The rest of the day Veronica spent in her office, tormented by anxious thoughts. She paced back and forth, trying to find a solution. In her desperation, she even considered throwing the mirror away, but quickly pulled herself back. If she could foresee deaths, perhaps she could prevent them. This thought gave her hope and strength. Veronica repeatedly recalled the vision, the ginger cat, the woman lying on the ground. "What could I have done?" she agonized. "How could I have saved her?" Veronica realized that she needed more information. She needed to find out how the mirror worked, who created it, and what its purpose was. She started by researching the history of the antique shop where she bought the mirror. Veronica spent hours online into the late night, sifting through websites and forums dedicated to mysticism and paranormal phenomena. Despite all her efforts, Veronica couldn't find any information about the mirror. She spent hours scouring the internet, studying books on mysticism and the paranormal, but it was all in vain. Despair began to overwhelm her. Maybe it's all just a silly coincidence, she thought with despair. Maybe I'm just going crazy? At that moment, Veronica absent-mindedly glanced into the mirror. In its dark depths, a new vision flashed. A man crossing the street and a speeding car heading straight for him. She recognized the intersection. It was near her home. "I have to save him," raced through her mind. Veronica rushed out of the house and ran to the intersection. Her heart was pounding and her head was throbbing. She arrived just in time. At the last moment, she grabbed the man by the arm and pulled him out of the way. The car zoomed past, barely missing them. The man, stunned, looked at Veronica. "Thank you," he mumbled. "You saved my life." Veronica couldn't hold back her tears. She had saved him. She had managed to change fate. But at that moment, something Veronica couldn't have anticipated happened. Moments later, the car she had pulled out of the way crashed into a pole at high speed. The driver died on the spot. Veronica stood frozen, unable to believe her eyes. She had thought she could alter fate, save a life, but instead, she had witnessed his tragic death. All night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed the events of the day, the vision in the mirror, the saved man, and the horrific accident. Only by morning did exhaustion finally overcome her, and she fell into a restless sleep. She was awakened by a phone call. It was her sister, checking on how Veronica was doing. "I'm fine," Veronica lied. She didn't want to share her struggles or let anyone know about her strange gift. After taking a shower and getting dressed, Veronica went outside. On the way, she absent-mindedly glanced into the mirror. It only reflected her own image. "What does this mean?" she wondered. "Why can't I see the future? Why couldn't I save that person?" Veronica had no answers to these questions, but she was determined to uncover the truth about the mirror. She needed to understand how it worked and who had sent it to her. Veronica sat in the doctor's office, nervously fiddling with the edge of her coat. The doctor, an elderly man with discerning eyes, observed her closely. "So, Veronica," he began, "you've been complaining about insomnia and nightmares for several weeks now. Additionally, you are constantly anxious. Tell me, what is troubling you?" She didn't want to talk about the mirror, her visions, or the fears that plagued her. I don't know," she murmured. "It's just, I feel like something is wrong with me." The doctor frowned. "Veronica," he said, "I understand that it's difficult for you to talk, but I need to know what's going on so that I can help you." Veronica sighed and, stumbling over her words, began to speak. She told him about the mirror, the visions, the death of the intern, and how she had tried to save the man but failed. The doctor listened attentively, not interrupting. "Veronica," he said when she finished, "I think you've experienced a great deal of stress. You need time to recover." He prescribed her a sedative and recommended that she see a psychologist. "Don't be afraid, you will get help," he said. Veronica left the doctor's office feeling drained. She didn't know if the psychologist would help her, but she was relieved to have finally shared her secret. 2 weeks later, Veronica was sitting in her favorite cafe again. She looked tired and lost in thought, her pale face even paler. She ordered a cup of coffee and, trying to ignore everyone around her, took the mirror out of her bag. With trembling hands, she opened it. In the mirror, there was only darkness. "What does this mean?" Veronica murmured, feeling a lump rise in her throat. Fear enveloped her once more. She cursed loudly and nervously set the mirror aside. People looked at her with puzzled expressions, but Veronica didn't care. She was too exhausted and distressed to think about anyone else. Veronica sat in the cafe for a few more minutes, unable to collect her thoughts. She decided to go for a walk. She got up and went outside, deciding to take a walk through the park to the lake where she loved to stroll. The walk did not bring her any relief. Her thoughts plagued her. On the contrary, she felt even worse. She felt a heaviness. Her breathing became irregular. Her heart raced and her vision darkened. Veronica clutched her chest and fell to the ground. All she saw was darkness. Meanwhile, in the cafe, a young waitress clearing a table noticed the mirror that Veronica had left behind. With curiosity, she picked it up and began to examine it. People often left their things behind. She glanced into it. In the mirror, she saw her own reflection. "Well," she said, "if no one comes back for you, I'll keep you for myself." The waitress had no idea that her story with the mirror was just beginning. Where there is death, death will always follow.